Good morning. Welcome to this week's Living the Shift live stream podcast. This is Angela Coulter. I am the originator of a practice called Trinity Energy Progression, and I am a consciousness transformation and ascension guide, bringing you this weekly chat on all kinds of things spiritual. Anyhow, so this week, what I want to talk about is what I said, nothing to be attached to, but this is like really an important topic in so many respects. So one is that we are to be unattached, right? So I think it's Buddhism that talks about non-attachment. I mean, there are many practices, many belief systems that talk about non-attachment, and they practice it differently depending on the belief system, right? So like some believe that non-attachment means like giving everything up and living in a temple or a convent or whatever. And and that's fine for some people. And then some, and then there's just different varying things. They're just like living in a cave, right? I think it was the Buddha. Was it the Buddha that was in a cave for like 12 years or something like that, meditating? It doesn't. So what I'm here to talk about today is there's so many different facets to non-attachment, and it's become such a prominent thing to look at in our realities as we embrace changing and we embrace the evolution of all of us collectively, and we embrace being in higher consciousness while we're still in these bodies. So one of the biggest hurdles that we have that the ego tends to hold on to, and as I always say, the ego is not something to vilify. It's just simply doing its job that it's had, which has been to explore individuality and separation. So when we're coming back to higher consciousness and collective consciousness and going beyond, it's to really be in the divine consciousness as a whole, to be superseding that identity and separation, right? So when I talk about the ego getting attached to stuff, it's the ego that really does, because when we do run from separation and identity, we run from the belief that we're in lack from within and that we have other things that make us more complete, right? So we believe that relationships can make us more complete. We believe that, having certain things can make us, a better person, look like a better person, have other people believe we're a better person. And so we accumulate things, right? We have a car, we have a house, some of us, and stuff, right? And what I've been talking to with a lot of the people in my spiritual circle lately has been that our guidance is just to let go, right? Let go and be non-attached. Now, so we'll start with stuff, and then we're going to get into the more challenging. Like, we think the stuff is challenging, but when we have all these attachments to these other things, that can be even more limiting on our journey. And the reason to let go, or be willing to let go and not attach to something, is because if we're too attached to something, we are then forcing our reality forward with that thing, whatever it is. It could be a thing, or it could be a person, a relationship, a situation, a job, a lifestyle. And it will limit us because we'll keep on trying to force it into those boxes. I call them boxes, right? Well, I have to have my reality with this person. Like, I'm married to them, I have to be with them forever. Or I'm with them, or we're supposed to be together forever. We're supposed to be, right? So I always tell people, one of the things that's always key to listen to is how we speak and how we think. Because that always gives us messages as to what's being driven by the ego versus the higher consciousness, right? So if we sit there and we say, or we think, I'm supposed to do this, I'm not supposed to do that, I have to do this, I can't do that, I should do this, or I shouldn't do that. Those are all ego-based, separation, duality-based judgments. It's when we say, I can do this, I might do this, and if the guidance is to do this, then I just do it. That's the thing. So here's we talk about guidance and we talk about listening to guidance. And right now we are being shifted so quickly, or we're being shifted. We are shifting so quickly. Our realities are shifting so quickly that what causes us to trip up, to get sick, to have injuries, to have challenges and shutdowns in our lives, things that break, is because we're insisting on holding on to something, right? So it's an attachment of some sort that doesn't serve us if we move forward into what's next and more expanded for us. And often we like say, no, but this, like I've done enough, right? And I've talked about that. I don't know if I've talked about that here. I know I've talked about it a lot in other places. But we all have this thing called like what we believe is enough. Like I've done enough. I've given up enough. I've changed enough. I am happy enough. I'm prosperous enough. I'm healthy enough. I'm happy enough. And we think that's enough because we don't at some core level believe that we have this innate value as the divine, as divine consciousness incarnate as who we are. And our birthright is to not just have enough or be enough or do enough, but to be blissful and extraordinary and have fun with it, So we start with talking about all that kind of stuff. We start with talking about things and people that we're stuck with, that we're not stuck with, that we stick ourselves with, that we put boxes around and say, okay, so, I'm done enough. And I see this so much in many of those of us who are very conscious and active on being conscious and moving forward is, okay, well, I do this, and this, right? And then the universe is sort of like kicking, or your higher self is however you want to look at it, sort of kicking the person to move in this direction, right? But they're like, no. And the implicit thought in there is, but I've done enough. I've changed this, and I meditate, and I do this, and I do that, and blah, blah, blah. So I should be able to hold on to this, right? And so it's easy for us to say things from like that really theoretical perspective. But when we look at things like relationships, right, our roles, okay, that's a big one that we get attached to, are our roles. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday who has gone through some absolutely huge, major life changes, like at this point in life that you would it's amazing. And that she's embracing it and embraced every step of the way just speaks so much to how dedicated she is to the expansion of her consciousness, to living her passion and happiness and love. But it has meant really picking up everything in her life and shaking it all out and making some major changes, right? And so sometimes we lose touch. We don't talk, a lot, but fairly regularly. But if I don't hear from her for a while, it's like I know that she's going through like another phase of, and she said, yeah, because I reached out and I was like, so how you been? I haven't talked to you in forever. And she said, yeah. So yeah, I've gone through this. I've been clearing out my clutter. I've been getting rid of stuff, right? She goes, and in the process, it has forced me to look at some things that I hadn't resolved within myself, right? Even just like clearing out boxes and things like that. And she, came across pictures of her parents who had passed away. And she's like, and I realized from like 1998, I still had not really dealt with the grief of my parents passing. And she goes, and just me going through the process of clearing out all this stuff, because she's getting ready to move, major life changes, all that kind of stuff. She's like, it caused me to hit some really deep, dark places that I didn't realize were there. She's like, so I did a lot of crying, a lot of letting it flow, letting it come up so that I can look at it, so that I could, resolve and embrace it and love it within me so that I can move on. And she's like, and it was intense. She goes, every time I think the most intense part is over, another level comes up. She goes, because then there is grief for the present changes in my life and all that kind of stuff. So, which has to do with a long-term marriage, resolving and completing and all that kind of stuff. So, and then, and she said, every time I think I'm done, there's another level of stuff that I didn't realize I'm still holding on to. And so I look at her and I think, wow. And she, of many people that I know, is one of those who are changing their life so dramatically and still are finding these boxes that they're hiding in the closet kind of thing, literally and figuratively. So what I tell everyone is, if you're bumping up against a brick wall on something in your life, whether it is, money, a relationship, relationship issues, or not even just issues, just changes, right? Guidance to change your place where you live, what you're doing, and you're finding this resistance or anger, or you're just putting this extraordinary amount of energy into keeping it in place. That's something to look at. And I hear people say, oh, no, it's fine. It's fine. I'm pretty happy. You know what that means when I say I'm pretty happy? It means I'm happy enough. It means I believe that I don't deserve to be happier than I am. And when we say things like that, I'm happy enough, I'm prosperous enough, I'm healthy enough, I'm, comfortable enough, right? Makes me cringe a little bit. It's sort of a dead end, because it's what we believe, that I'm enough. This is enough, and I don't deserve, really what it means is I don't believe I deserve more than this, that I'm just happy with what I have because I didn't really think I was deserving of it to begin with. So think about that. And it's a little harsh to hear the words out loud, because we have them really deeply embedded in us. But right now we're being pushed forward so quickly to expand in such a huge way that it's okay, so enough is enough. Enough is enough. And it's time to really step into truly who we are. Now, here's the other thing. So then we get stuck in that box, right? So every box we leave, we create new ones, because this is our habit. So here's the new one. The new one is, oh, well, I'm doing this. I was guided to do this 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever. And this is my life's purpose. I believe this is my life's purpose. And this is, what I should be doing. And yet there are so many signs that are showing that maybe that's not what you should be doing, that maybe that's not your life's purpose. And maybe it's a piece of your life's purpose, but there are much bigger pieces. And the implicit thought behind that is, oh, I'm doing enough toward my life's purpose, and I'm staying comfortable in this other part of my life, right? So and I see this time and time again. So many get stuck in these roles of, I've done this long enough. I've done this a long time. I hear this a lot. I've done what I do for a job for a really long time, and I'm pretty happy doing it. I'm comfortable doing it. I like it. And then I do the stuff I'm passionate about on the weekends. And we think that's enough, right? That's another place where we think that's enough. And I say, okay, that's fine. That's great. So what if you allowed yourself to incorporate the stuff you're passionate about into what you're doing day to day and getting paid to do it? And it's not saying that, some people think you have to go into business for yourself or whatever. There are so many ways to employ stuff that you're passionate about. And you don't have to be a business owner. Some people just that's not their thing. Maybe it's being in another job where they employ certain kinds of passion that they allow themselves to, embody and to really, what's the word? Blossom in. It's not the word, but you get the idea. And so that can allow them, maybe even the steps to okay, now allowing myself to get paid to do what I'm really passionate about, and then taking steps toward, okay, maybe I will at some point be guided to do this on my own, and that I will be able to trust that I can do it on my own. And I see this happening all over the place. So one of the biggest habits for us in this attachment and non-attachment thing is truly getting past that habit of this is enough versus, so here's the difference. There's a difference between being completely happy and accepting and loving about the present moment, right? There's a difference between that and being stuck in this is enough. I don't need to do anything else. I don't need to go any places. And truly you don't in the presence of this moment. And so, but what if you allowed yourself even more in the next moment? And even more in the moment after that. And that's where we sort of get stuck, because we're in this, and it's a habit. It's such a deeply embedded habit, and I still catch myself doing it. So I'm okay, so what if I just cleared the whole playing field and said, so what would this look like? And that's really what I've been doing with my own business over the past 6 to 8 months, because there are elements to it that I love and I'm passionate about. And there's some stuff that I really haven't been. And I'm saying, so here's a hard look at it. If I don't like it, don't do it. That's my guidance. And so that's what I've been doing. I've been cutting stuff out. All right, what is it that I would love to do? because I know when I allow myself to do this stuff that I'm really passionate about, that everything opens, all the doors open for me, and situations happen, synchronicities happen, all that kind of stuff. And I don't know what that's going to look like, because it keeps on changing, right? And expanding, because the more I allow, the more it comes in, and then the more I allow, kind of thing. So that's one thing also, like, to just sort of put on the side for the moment, because there's something else that I want to talk about today, and that has to do with it has to do with our practices and our belief systems and how we practice and what we believe. Because I always tell anyone that any kind of belief system, any kind of practice, spiritual practice, is great as long as it helps you to expand your consciousness beyond where it's been. Okay? And then when you feel like you're limited by that, then it's time to move on to something else. The challenge is we get into that creatures of habit mode and we stay in the same place. We say, oh, well, I've done this forever. I was brought up with this belief system. I was, this is what my parents did and my grandparents did and whatever. So this is what I'm supposed to do to be a good person. Again, now that's ego, right? To say, because when the ego says it matters that what somebody else thinks of us, then we do everything we can to live up to that ideal or the expectation, right? And that's an ego thing of saying that I'm not valuable as I am, so I have to prove myself or do stuff to be valuable and make other people think I am, so that then I can think so myself. So then we get stuck in all that kind of stuff. And then that even includes not just family. That includes like things like, okay, I've had my teacher, or I've been working under, or I've been learning with this person for a long time. And this includes people who've been working with me. It's like, okay, and this serves me now. And now I'm being guided to go and explore other stuff too. And there's nothing wrong with that. But we have this whole societal thing of like obligation and expectation and what we owe someone. And I always say, well, if you're a guy, well, and then if we are unattached to what we're doing and how we're doing it, and we just trust that my dedication is to really getting to the place of being the full embodiment of divine consciousness in this individual, and being the full realization of that consciousness. And I just will allow it to happen in the way that is the most fun and expansive and, amazing. And I let that go and trust that it's already happened. I let it happen, right? And then if I'm guided to go certain places and do certain things, even if it seems really sort of odd in terms of what the mind would think is what's in that box, then we would, then I would trust that and just continue on with it. And I get that all the time. And the more I let go, the more bizarre sometimes the guidance is. Bizarre in terms of the mind thinking, how does that even fit? There are certain things that, we have all these boxes that we put around everything that we do. So whether it's your spiritual practice or your day-to-day life, the key is to be open to, okay, I might have been taking this supplement for 20 years or this medication or whatever. And if guidance says it's time to change, then the key is to trust the guidance to say, okay, so how do I change it? And what is it for me to change? And give me the next step. Give me conscious clarity and understanding of the next step so that I do change it in a way that does serve me in that process of becoming that realization of the divine consciousness I am. Sounds really easy, right? When we say it. But when we actually put it into practice, because a lot of people feel like this. Like I was saying, why do we have so much unhappiness? We have so much unhappiness because we are spending collectively so much time filling what we believe to be holes from what's outside of us, that we forget that we put all this energy to that, and we get stuck right in that energy that's so close to the bottom of the barrel in terms of vibration. Like, so fear and anxiety and anger and expectations and judgments and all that kind of stuff. And when we let go of that and we are not attached to that at all, and we just say, you know what, I am just going to observe. I'm going to dedicate myself to love and unity and wholeness and that divine consciousness embodiment and realization. and I will observe everything else. And if I am guided to change something, I will change it. If I'm guided to do it differently, I will do it. If I'm guided to go someplace and I'm not even understanding why, I'll do it. Every time I've done that, the more I do it, the more I always get I get the action validated in some way, shape, or form, like afterward. Sometimes it's afterward. Sometimes I have no idea I'm doing something. What I love is a lot of people who know me know that that's really how I run, is if I'm guided to do something, I do it. And if I'm not, I don't. And it has nothing to do with my emotions, because the emotions of like want and have to and obligation all come from the ego. But when I commit myself to love, no matter what, right, and guidance is do this and don't do this, even if I don't see why or why not, then it always works out in a way that is perfect, right? Actually, everything's always perfect. It's just the lessons that they're to bring us. And if I commit myself to a certain way of those lessons, and that learning lessons from love, a friend of mine wrote a blog this week about choosing to learn lessons from love instead of learning lessons from suffering, because we can. And we have all these like romanticisms about like how, the epic journey is something that when we've overcome, like we only learn lessons when we've overcome something tremendous and all that kind of stuff. And we've had this belief really deeply embedded, again, in attachment. And when we get to that place of saying, no, actually, I can actually learn lessons through love and unity and wholeness and trust, then things start happening in a much different manner. And like I said, this one's another one that's really so much bigger than a bread box, is to, looking at how many have these undercurrents of friction within themselves, because the ego is saying, because of where it is, for whatever reason, for wherever it is on its own self-value, will say this is enough. So it'll try to fold away any guidance or push away or out, be louder. I can't think of the word. I'm seeing this. Be louder than the higher guidance to try to drown it out, because it doesn't want to let go of this thing that's comfortable. I am totally excited when I see how many that I've known and worked with take the ball and run with it when the guidance comes in that says, do this, even if it means sometimes it's leaving a relationship, sometimes it's leaving, the household, sometimes it's leaving a geography, a job, a life, and they do it. And I'm very, I don't like saying proud, but it's like, yes, yay, more and more of us are getting it. And then I dedicate myself even more to doing that myself. And I know I keep on getting guidance to change. Somebody I hadn't spoken to for a long time, like reached out, and we were sort of, PMing back and forth. And all I could say was every day is really full. And all the lessons are right now have to do with being completely present. So, I trust that the clients that are coming to me are the perfect clients, and they are. I mean, we have a great camaraderie, vibrationally, we understand each other. It's very easy. And then, I'm guided to do different things. I was guided to do this Ways to Celebrate Me month for my 50th birthday, which is funny because you see that's really 3D, except there's been all these little intrinsic benefits that have been happening, not just for me, but everybody who's come along with me on this. And I had no idea why I was being guided to do it to begin with. And I'm like, oh, well, look at this. This is awesome. Even more awesome than I could have ever imagined, And so, and I have other things that are coming up now that I'm looking at and working on and getting ready for, that the guidance is do this. Funny enough, like I've had some weird things going on as my house is being bought by the DOT, and it's like this start-stop, like almost like and I've known this for years, and it's just happening, right? So I'm prepared for it. And the thing is, I just don't know exactly when it's going to happen. It could happen tomorrow, and it could happen next year. It could happen later. It could happen. It's just sort of crazy. And my guidance has been sort of wonky, not wonky, but wacky in terms of what you would think, right? So guidance is like, go ahead and paint, because I've wanted to, paint the interior different colors and just refresh stuff. And it's like, go ahead and do this. Go ahead and do that. And a lot of people say to me, why are you doing that if your house is going to get bought and taken down shortly? And I'm like, I don't know, because I'm guided to, and it makes me happy. And right now, the presence right now is what's really happy, what's really important. And so when I come to things from a place of unconditional love, when I come to things with the dedication to unconditional love and unity, that's also the key, because often, we get stuck in the listening to the ego guidance that passes itself off as higher guidance. And I always say, well, listen to things like, oh, well, do this because this is better than that. Because when we think that, that's actually ego. Something that is judgment, better or worse, then is actually all ego too. So it's like, okay, well, actually, what might I do for the bigger picture for me to realize this dedication to full realization or actualization? Depends on who you talk to, different terms. So when we come to it from a place of love and unity, it will never be like, do this and hurt this person or blah, blah, blah. Sometimes it's just like, do this, period. And there's no thought, because here's the thing, when we spend all this energy and time saying, well, if I do this, it's going to hurt this person, it's going to make this person angry. That's it. That's all ego, because that's all worrying that we're going to get somebody angry with us or upset with us. If we dedicate ourselves to speaking and thinking and acting from love and unconditional love for ourselves and others, and guidance is to do something a certain way, I always say, like, so even if the ego says, oh, okay, so the ego here is a great little filter saying, oh, so that could be a little uncomfortable to everybody involved. So then I'll step back and be like, okay, so give me the words in the way of unconditional love and wholeness that are the I don't like saying best, are the ones that are going to stay in that place of love for this situation. And then when you do that, that's really coming from this place of authenticity that we haven't been before. So there's so many layers to the same thing. So it's a reassessment of our life in every moment, to be completely happy and present now, and not to be attached to everything. Because one of the things for us to look at is that we believe that everything we have is what makes us happy. The reality is we make ourselves happy. And when we're not attached to everything we have, we realize that more, because we realize it's me who's responsible for my happiness, not, say this glass or, this house or my family or my husband or my kids or my wife or whatever. That's not what makes us happy. We make ourselves happy. When we put the onus on other things and people to make us happy, that's a lot of weight and energy to give to that person or thing or animal, right? And the thing is, when we come to every day and every moment from saying, okay, so I am responsible for my own happiness, and I am going to be self-responsible for all of my actions, for all of my emotions. I'm not going to throw blame on other people. Or if I try to, if I can observe that within myself, I'm going to say, okay, so what is the trigger within me? But when we come into this place of self-responsibility, more and more we can let go of the stuff, or I don't even want to say let go. We can be non-attached to everything around us, to say, well, if tomorrow the house blew up and I lived in a car, I'd be okay. If tomorrow, like everybody in my family was gone, I'd be okay. If I was sitting in my living room, and I always tell people this is a great sort of test of attachment and non-attachment. If I was sitting in my living room and some portal opened up and some being comes through that felt very, felt connected and loving, and said, it's time, like I'm here to get you to come do this because, this is your calling or whatever. I would check my guidance. If my guidance said yes, I would get up and go. And the question I always ask people is, so as crazy as that sort of sounds, would you be able to do the same? Many can't, because they're too attached to, well, what if? Some people say, oh yeah, I'd be happy to walk away. The funny thing is, when somebody says that to me, I say, well, then why are you not walking away already? If you're saying, oh, I would be happy for, blah, 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 the opportunity to just walk away from everything, I'm like, so then change it. Find like what that's causing, what that is caused from within yourself, so that you can change that to a place of happiness and being happy with what's around you, or listen to your guidance to change it, regardless of how emotional or distraught or sad the ego gets. So this friend of mine that I was talking about that I spoke to yesterday, that's going through those changes, and she said, yeah, she goes, it was really, I hit rock bottom there for a little bit, and then my body just was detoxing all the stuff, and it looked like it was a really bad cold or a virus, and I know that it had nothing to do with sickness. It just had to do with me allowing this deeply embedded anger and sadness and fear and everything else to come up from everything I've been processing. And it took me like several weeks to let go, for it to finally flow through, right? And she's like, and then she goes, and now I feel great. It's been like a week. She's like, I feel great now. So, and then, there's the perception of, oh, it's going to be painful. Well, that's also an ego perception. And maybe we'll do that next week. The perception of pain and suffering is a great topic, because it's time for us to shift beyond that. But anyhow, so that's it. That's about it for this week. I want you to, this week, just be observant to those things that you believe you're attached to. Your animals, your pet, your spouses, your kids, your situation, your role. And actually, it's funny. The friend of mine that I was talking to, I was getting that she's talking about part of all the sadness and grief and mourning that she went through. She said, I realized wasn't even from that situation or the situations that were coming up and remembrance. She goes, it was my attachment to the roles that I've had around those situations, around those parts of my life. And she goes, and it was sort of like grieving and mourning the completion of those roles while I let them go in completion, to say, okay, now I'm ready to move on. That's a really deep one. Like, could you let go of the role of being a mother, or a father, or a spouse? Could you let go of the role of taking care of somebody? Could you let go or something? Could you let go of these roles that we so tightly hold on to prove our worth, because we don't believe we have it already intrinsically, right? Because when we are in this place of non-attachment, and I'm running a little over, but we're in this place of non-attachment and say, okay, well, I'm in this role. I'll accept that in this moment. Except it's not my worth. It's not my value, and I'm not attaching my value to it. I'm going to listen to guidance in this role of what to do for the situation that allows everything in synchronicity to move forward in the most realized, love-based way. That's a really challenging thing, especially in parenthood, right? Because we believe, oh, we're supposed to keep our kids safe. And what that is, like with 5 different people, is 5 different things, like how to keep our kids safe, right? How to keep our family safe, or together, or the importance of that, or like we identify with having to be together in a group and all that kind of stuff. But if we say, you know what, I am in a place of love, and I love these people around me as I love myself, and I am allowing myself to fill this role in this moment from a place of love and wholeness in the situation, how do I, what is it for me to do? That's a very different way to act, especially as a parent, than by what we think we're supposed to do. That makes us more valuable, that makes us keep our kids safe. But here, what I tell people all the time is, like, they lose themselves in the energy of trying to do all this stuff for their kids because they want their kids to love them, or believe that they were, and they're like, well, what if something happens to my kid and everything else? And I'm like, then it was in their path. It was in their journey to happen, and that's their journey. And all you can do is hold a space of unconditional love, commit to being in this role of being their parent from this place of love and wholeness, to hold that space for them to be able to come to that place for themselves. And will they have some lessons to learn? Yes, they will. Sometimes they'll look sort of painful in the 3D reality. But the non-attachment part is saying, it is not my responsibility to make them happy. It is my responsibility to hold the space of self-happiness, self-love, so that they can learn that it is most important for them to realize what is the allowance of their happiness in place of unconditional love. Because when they get there, then they make better choices. They do things independently, and they appreciate everything around them that has taught them that way too, versus still like in this place of need that they then grow up to believe that they have. It's like, I need you to do this for me. I need you to do that for me, and all that kind of stuff. So, and we still all have that in different levels, but it's a matter of getting more and more non-attached to this stuff, so that when we're guided to do something else, then we are just as easy. It's like taking off a pair of jeans and putting on a different pair of pants, putting on a different coat or whatever, to say, okay, done with this, and now I need to do this right now. When we're that fluid, things work so synchronistically and so perfectly, and we can trust better, and we can come from a place of love better. And there's a dependence, and the energy that we put on this dependence and the lack and egoic emotions and worry and anxiety and fear go away. They just go away. So much more to say about that. But as always, now we're at almost 36 minutes. I'm going to cut you off for this week. But this week, I want you to look at those things in your life that you feel like if you were guided to walk away from, like in the next moment, what would you really have a hard time doing? And then stepping back and saying why, and sort of start looking within yourself to say, okay, so let me change this. Let me look, how do I change this in a way that is, fun and loving and free and non-attached, even if I am guided to be in this role or doing this right now. Hey, Gloria. So thank you for joining me. We'll see you next time. This is Angela Coulter signing off with this week's Living the Shift. Have a great one.